over here in the U.S., we're potentially undersaving and underinvesting, overconsuming. In China, they're potentially, we could say, overinvesting and underconsuming. So, I guess we're just playing true to our cultural types here. But where's it going? Is this a system that we can just kind of muddle through and it'll all work out in the end? Is it even a problem? Certainly there's a lot of people who are quite concerned about China's asset bubble. And there's certainly people who are quite concerned about Americans' seeming addiction to buying stuff that nobody needs. So what do you think? How do these two economies work together?
Well, I think that on the Chinese side, the inflation problem is to be taken very seriously. Historically, inflation drives social unrest.
Especially in China.
There are some new numbers on social unrest coming out of China only this morning. They're different from the old numbers. The old numbers, they reported these, quote, mass incidents, and the numbers were going up to the thousands.
What drives social unrest in America? Would that be unemployment?
We don't. But for the 60s, we have so little of it.
We have so little of it.
It's quite amazing. Do you consider the protest of the employees in Wisconsin to be social unrest? I'm not sure. But China is now reporting major incidents of social unrest. A new study just got on my computer this morning. And it's clear that the trend is up. It's clear that the government is now deeply into what they call social management.
Right.
And Hu Jintao, Xi Jinping had a meeting with the national and provincial leaders last Saturday.
Right.
Beijing, and
Right.
they announced all these measures. Yeah, we all heard about this. So they're deeply concerned about this.
So clearly retail therapy is not really the prescription for Chinese happiness, is it?
No. But the downside, the limit, the asymptote of the GDP growth machine in China is inflation and the subsequent social unrest. Now the worry is that unemployment's just as bad. So they're, in some sense, between the proverbial rock and a hard place. You either stabilize prices by taking some unemployment, or maintain employment by allowing some inflation. And there are two different parties on this. The bankers clearly want to stabilize the currency, stabilize prices, excuse me. But the provincial officials have a very different view. Their feeding schedule has been different. They're the ones who are promoted for GDP. So that's now we haven't talked about the U.S. though, and I have to claim very little expertise there. Ironically,
I've spent more of my adult life living in China than I have here. I guess the question that presents in the minds of the American commercial and business, I'm not going to talk financial sector, that's not really my world, is given China's amazing growth, which and liquidity, which are two things we really don't have in the U.S. right now.
Well, liquidity is there's actually lots of liquidity in the U.S.
It's just not moving.
It's not moving. That's right. Yeah.
It's just behind some sort of dam, and it's
both in the banks and the corporations.
Right. So there's this attraction on the part of Western business to, am I relevant to China? And is there a way that I can get my hands on some of that liquidity and some of that growth? So that's the subject matter that I'm preoccupied with all the time. U.S. says globally the problem is jobs. So how are the Chinese going to help us create jobs? Is essentially the simplest way to translate that question of how is China relevant to the economic health of the U.S. You have another way of asking the question, because that's the one that keeps coming up to me, and I think sure, the Chinese do want to invest overseas. They've got all this liquidity.
Right.
They've got all this growth.
Right.
They need the things that there are not enough of in China. So theoretically, the investment capital should be coming out of China and creating jobs, not only in Africa, but in the United States. So why isn't it happening, everybody asks me, and I've got a really long answer for that. But I'd love to hear your long answer, because everybody who knows me has already heard mine.
Okay, I'll need to hear yours later, but I think that there are opportunities in China where the Chinese cannot supply themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in two arenas. One arena is going to be agriculture and water.
Right.
Okay, now, agriculture doesn't employ a lot of people in the U.S. It may never employ a lot of people. Again, maybe 1 or 2% of our population max is in agriculture. It's highly mechanized. As we know, farms are huge. They're extraordinarily productive. The U.S. is very lucky to have a very dependable grain supply. So production and export of grains in particular could provide money, although not necessarily a lot of jobs here in the U.S.
Gee, that's politically sensitive, though, isn't it?
Pardon?
Letting the Chinese invest in U.S. agriculture?
Who said we'll let them invest? Okay, I mean, that's, investing, producing is one thing, investing is something else.
Don't the Chinese already buy lots of North American, grain, depending on the year?
This year they're buying
Canadian as well as
they're
American.
buying soybeans
Right.
and I think some corn in quantities they haven't in the past years. The question is they're going to buy wheat, because it looks like there's going to be a problem with
The winter wheat crop is
wheat
gone.
crop's going to get knocked out. The other opportunity, again, it's a little hard to capture, but go back to the demographics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
The support base under the one-child policy for the elderly is very weak. And so they're going to need a lot of medical and related services. Now again, those...
Which goes back to what should the Chinese do right now? And I think you and I agreed over coffee on Sunday that they should buy Canada.
No, you proposed that they buy Canada. Actually, I did the math. I did the mathematics, and it came to something like $25 trillion, which goes.
But think of all they get.
But it goes
agricultural,
goes a little
water.
beyond their $3 trillion of foreign reserves.
Yeah, little.
Yeah, we'd have to get really a dip, but maybe Saskatchewan.
Just a part of Canada.
Right, just a part of Canada. Produces lots of wheat.
Right.
Okay, that's
and has great health care.
And presumably has great health care.
Presumably.
I don't know whether it's exportable or not. What I really see happening here is we can sell commodities like wheat to China. We can sell some technologies to China. We can provide templates for medical care and other professional services to China, but supplying them from our population is a little bit hard to do, given the distance. So it's not clear that China is going to be buying a lot. It's going to be, China's purchases are going to fix the employment problem in the United States. It's not clear at all. It is. I think it's pretty.
So it's really just not. It's not a bilateral dynamic. Full stop. China and the U.S. China having growth in cash, the U.S. having a need for jobs. It's really not. It's not tied to the same driver at all. Despite what Chuck Schumer would have us believe.
Right. And China's export engine probably will slow a bit because the costs are going to go up. But it's not going to move back.
It is.
As we heard, it's not coming back to the U.S.
No, we've got to do something different.
It'll go to the next lowest price country. Right. So, we've got a challenge in this country.
Well, so do the Chinese.
And the Chinese have a challenge. They're
We're both
very,
challenged.
very different challenges. And what can we do in the US? It sounds like a nostrum, but it's true, and I'll say it, and I'm going to incur the wrath of a majority of Arizonans by saying this. We know, just slam dunk fact, that immigration is a major stimulus to the U.S. economy. Why? Because so many of the entrepreneurs, the innovators, are immigrants.
Right.
Okay.
Necessity being the mother of invention.
Necessity
One would
being
suppose comfort being the enemy.
Right. So necessity is the mother of invention here. We allow immigration, we do two things. A, we attract the best and the brightest. We do. We still do. And we also attract, along with the best and the brightest, or among the best and the brightest, I should say, those who are willing to work the hardest. And the combination of the two cannot but help stimulate the U.S. economy. I'll only go even further. Go back to demography. Japan's population pyramid, like that, upside down V. Europeans' population
Same
pyramid.
thing.
Well, not quite as like Japan. China's population pyramid, moving toward that. The U.S. population pyramid, not. Provided we have immigration. So, I'm sorry, I apologize to the population of Arizona, which is about to, or the legislature, which is about to pass another anti-immigration bill. But it seems to me that the one thing we can do quickly and can control is our immigration policy. And we can shape a policy which may not serve every interest in this country well, but will serve the country very well. That lady holding the torch in New York Harbor should not be forgotten. Okay. It's not just a symbol of our freedom.
Or our past.
It's also the key to our prosperity, in my judgment.
Right. Well, there you have it. There's the ultimate Wall Street versus Main Street.
There it is.
It's not about securitizing debt or coming up with more sophisticated ways to report transactions. It's about bringing in people who are willing to work hard.
Right. And now we can
take
develop
a risk.
We could develop capital, human capital here at home.
But it takes longer.
Well, it's not just that it takes longer. It's that, go back to the China example. What's the easiest way to generate GDP? Pour concrete, right? What's the easiest way to generate personal wealth in the United States? Go to Wall Street.
Wall Street, yeah.
You see, that's the problem. The shortcuts get us, on both sides, into a little bit of trouble. Okay. So, should we set a quota for business schools? For every person who goes to Wall Street, you must also produce an entrepreneur?
That's a good idea.
It's really
I
hard.
don't think it would work.
It's really hard to implement. But
Especially
that's,
since everyone who goes to business school wants to be an investment banker.
well, not everybody, and it's changing a little bit. But the fact is that people coming off the boats or off the airplanes or whatever the mode of transport typically don't aspire to Wall Street. Heck, they don't even speak English in many cases. Okay. They do aspire to create their own businesses, and we know the rates of business formation in immigrant communities are huge.
True.
Huge. Much higher than the general population.
So, I'm always pounding the drum about how we need to teach more Chinese. I suppose you might advocate teaching more Spanish.
I think that both, actually, because languages have their own ebb and flow, and it's likely that a huge portion of the world's population will speak Chinese or Spanish or English at some future point. So fluency in more than one of these languages is probably a good idea.